And now, the verdict of this movie. Landed on its side. Hello everyone and welcome to another Rewind review, and in this video I'm going to be taking a look at Batman Forever. Released in 1995, the follow-up to Batman Returns sees the Dark Knight battle former District Attorney Harvey Dent, who is now Two-Face, and Edward Nygma, the Riddler, with the help from an amorous psychologist and a young circus acrobat who becomes his sidekick, Robin. This time directed by Joel Schumacher, the DC Comics adaptation was written by Lee Batchelor, Janet Scott Batchelor and Akiva Goldsman, and stars Val Kilmer, Jim Carrey, Tommy Lee Jones, Nicole Kidman, Chris O'Dowd, Michael Goff, Pat Hingle, Drew Barrymore and Debbie Mazar. Yep, we have finally made it to the most divisive live-action Batman movie. And the reason I say that this one is the most divisive is because most people are quite split on this one. And I am only referring to solo Batman movies. Everyone knows how they feel about Batman and Robin, everyone knows how they feel about The Dark Knight. But with Batman Forever, some people love it, some people hate it, and some people really want to see the Schumacher cut. More on that later. For me, this one holds a special place for me because, if memory serves me right, this might have been the very first Batman anything that I ever saw. I didn't see the animated series when I was a kid, I saw that when I was a little bit older, and at the time the Tim Burton movies were a little bit too old for me. So as far as I remember, this was the first live action Batman movie that I ever saw. If not, it might have been the Adam West movie, but I'm not sure. And I'll be completely honest, I used to really enjoy this. I do remember though the first few times that I tried to watch this movie and Batman and Robin, they were always on quite late at night on TV, and the opening sequence would play out, and then after that I would have to go to bed. It was always on at bedtime, so it really frustrated me that I wasn't able to see the full movies. I've got a complicated history with Batman, but yes, I do think that this was the first live action Batman movie that I saw all the way through. But as I started to get older and the more times that I saw this movie, the problems were starting to stand out a little bit more. I mean, not that I didn't see any problems with it whatsoever, but they were a little bit more prominent. And I'll be completely honest, I haven't seen this movie all the way through in quite a few years, so I was really looking forward to revisiting it for this video. And it made for an interesting watch. And yeah, I am very split on how to feel about this one. So let's dive into it. So first things first, you've probably noticed just how different this movie feels and looks compared to the two Tim Burton films, despite being set within the same universe. Yes, it is. I mean, he's even one of the producers, and both Alfred and Commissioner Gordon are played by the exact same actors. But yes, compared to the first two movies, this movie does feel quite different, and that was intentional. It may be seen as a classic nowadays, but Batman Returns, back when it first came out, did nowhere near as well as the first movie at the box office. And even though critically it was received fairly positively, a lot of the casual audiences were a little bit split, especially parents. Parents weren't exactly happy to expose their kids to something that was admittedly quite dark, and even McDonald's ended up recalling their tie-in Happy Meal lineup. So Warner Brothers decided that a change was necessary and they parted ways with Tim Burton. Tim Burton did have some ideas about what it was that he was going to do for Batman 3. Originally it was going to be called Batman Continues, and Michelle Pfeiffer was set to return as Catwoman, and Billy D. Williams was set to return as Harvey Dent. And reportedly they also wanted Robin Williams as the Riddler and Marlon Wayans as Robin. I won't lie, I would like to see how that movie would have been like. But Warner Brothers decided to hand the reins over to the Batman franchise to director Joel Schumacher. And after seeing his movie The Lost Boys, I can see why. It's a very 80s movie, but the visual style and tone actually would work well for a Batman movie. And I think if this had been a bit more like The Lost Boys, we could have been in for something pretty cool. And it sounds like there may have been. Schumacher cut! And as for Michael Keaton, he reportedly didn't like the direction that this movie was going in, and he decided to step away in favour of more interesting roles. So Val Kilmer took over as the new Batman. So what we got was this really strange kind of follow-on that, yes, is a direct sequel to the Tim Burton movies, but feels like something completely different. The story for Batman Forever sees Batman forced to contend with two new villains that both have personal vendettas against the Dark Knight. Harvey Two-Face, a former lawyer who was horrifically scarred by an acid attack, and the Riddler, whose unhealthy obsession with Bruce Wayne forces him into a life of crime and a habit of leaving clues to his true identity. But when things escalate, Batman takes on the role of a mentor after a young circus performer called Dick Grayson is left orphaned after a confrontation with Two-Face, which reignites some old psychological trauma from Bruce's past past, and with the help and blossoming relationship with Dr. Chase Meridian, Bruce confronts the question of whether or not Bruce Wayne and Batman can ever truly coexist. There is so much happening in this movie, with several different subplots, and at times it does feel like there's two separate stories that have been mashed together. To be honest, this feels like a Riddler-centric Batman movie that just happens to feature Two-Face. Despite Two-Face in this continuity being directly connected to Robin's origin story, there is a little bit of me that does think that maybe they should have kept this as just a Two-Face-centric story. It would work much better, and I think that it would help tone down some of the more out there things. The thing that kickstarts Bruce's analysis of his own psyche is directly because of what Two-Face does. So I don't think that it would be a bad call, and you would have a lot more time to expand on things. And they might be able to add a lot of what was cut. There is supposedly a Joel Schumacher director's cut of this movie that clocks in at around 170 minutes. And by all accounts, it sounds like a much darker movie than the one that we got. It reportedly expands on Bruce's psychological torment, and it puts Two-Face front and centre as the central antagonist for the first half of the film, and then the Riddler takes over. They even had a scene where Bruce forgets that he is Batman, so he goes down into the cave to rediscover himself and let go of his guilt. And this scene includes that infamous shot of that giant man-bat creature. Honestly, I am curious how this would have worked, and I would like to see it someday. Why not release it for the 30th anniversary? On a side note, I only found out a few years ago that my DVD copy of Batman Forever is actually an edited UK version. The censorships in the UK are so weird that when the movie got released over here, several minutes were actually cut from the theatrical release. I remember a few years ago I was watching TV quite late at night and Batman Forever came on, so I decided to just leave it on. And there were several scenes that I was watching thinking, I don't remember this. The original theatrical cut of this movie is rated a PG in the UK, but the special edition full-length version is rated a 12. Anyway, despite there being so much cut and a few moments that just come out of nowhere, like Bruce just suddenly deciding that he wants to quit being Batman, it does surprisingly manage to do everything that it needs to do within a 2-hour runtime. The overall pacing for this movie is a lot faster than the previous films, but it does work quite well, and it does help keep this movie quite fun and lively. You do have to suspend your disbelief a bit more with this one because it can get quite over the top and a bit ridiculous. One consistent word that I often see getting used when referring to this movie is goofy. In all honesty, this movie feels like a weird blend of both the Tim Burton movies and the Adam West series, complete with cartoon sound effects, like Two-Face using a crook lock on his helicopter. His helicopter's got a steering wheel! And I'll just come out and say this, Riddler's plan makes no sense to me. His plan goes from this obsessive need to prove Bruce Wayne wrong, and somehow turns into this weird brain-draining and stealing people's knowledge and thoughts plan. Why? All the Riddler wants to do is prove just how much smarter than Batman he is by any means necessary. Manipulating brainwaves and brainwashing and all that stuff. That sounds more like the Mad Hatter. And why is it that he needs to team up with Two-Face? Two-Face has nothing to gain from it. All he wants to do is kill Batman. Oh, God. If you think I'm getting frustrated now, just wait until Batman and Robin. And all of this is happening alongside an exploration of Bruce's psyche. And that stuff is really interesting. It isn't touched on too much, but I like what it does show and how it expands on what happened to Bruce after his parents died. It's actually quite a good translation from the comics as well. Some of the images that you see are directly from the Batman comic books, like the spotlight over his parents' bodies with him kneeling in the middle, or when he sees the bat in the cave. This is actually some really good stuff, and I feel they do a lot more with it in this movie than they ever did in the Tim Burton films. I think that's why this movie is one of the more frustrating Batman entries, because of just how much potential it has. There's some amazing ideas that are used in this movie, like Bruce deciding whether he actually wants to be Batman or not, but a lot of this stuff is either rushed or not given enough time to be explored. This movie overall can be disappointing, but even so, it is entertaining. I do have fun with this movie, and I do think that there are quite a few things that I do quite like. And a big one is the cast. Say what you want about this, but nobody can fault the casting for this movie. Apart from the extras, they're just weird. Oh no, it's boiling acid. Gotham must know. Oh, there's Bruce Wayne! Brucey! Oh yeah, and if you keep an eye out during the scene where Bruce meets Nygma for the first time, Jon Favreau makes a little appearance. Now that was a cool discovery. I think Two-Face's henchwomen Sugar and Spice are quite unique, but entertainingly so. They don't really add much to this. I prefer Drew. Make of that what you will. Anyway, Batman Bruce Wayne in this movie is played by Val Kilmer, and to be completely honest, I think he is excellent. The way this version of Batman is written, I am a little bit split on, but when it comes to the performance, I can't say anything negative. I do think that it is a great performance. I think Val Kilmer is a very underrated Batman. The way he holds himself, how he looks in the cowl, even the voice he uses when he is Batman. I think his costume is pretty cool, looking more like a sleeker, rubberized, anatomically correct version of the Keaton suit. This is actually the first appearance of the bat nipples, but they aren't too noticeable. So within this movie, they can kinda get away with it. To be honest, I actually do quite like the silvery blue costume that he has during the finale. I honestly think that's not bad. He finds the right balance of being broody and intimidating as well as a swashbuckling superhero, and I genuinely really like him. I even think his final speech as Batman is pretty cool. You see, I'm both Bruce Wayne and Batman. Not because I have to be. Now, because I choose to be. Cinema! I've got to be honest, I do actually quite like seeing him out in the public in full costume in this movie and acting like a proper detective. Even though I do question if he really is the world's greatest detective in this. Who could possibly be sending me strange riddles? I don't know, maybe the weird nerdy guy who's clearly obsessed with you. I wonder who could be the Riddler. Gee, I don't know, Batman, maybe the guy who suddenly has massive fortune and has a little toy of the Riddler on his desk. Really, detective? Really? But apart from that, I do like him. And I've got to be honest, I do think that it is a shame that he never returned for more. Reportedly, he clashed quite a lot with Joel Schumacher behind the scenes, so what can you do? Then again, lucky escape. Anyway, also in this movie is the long overdue introduction to Robin. And in this movie, he is played by Chris O'Donnell. He's playing the Dick Grayson version of Robin, even though I do think there are a few moments where he kind of feels a bit more like Jason Todd. And we do get to see his origin story with the circus and the flying Graysons. That is actually a pretty decent sequence, to be fair. I think that Chris does the best he can with what he's given. I definitely think that we could have done with seeing more of Robin in this. But I like how his story plays out and how it ties into Bruce's. His character can shift quite a bit throughout this movie, and I am a little bit mixed on the overall portrayal. I know that Dick Grayson generally is, in spite of his trauma, a fairly light-hearted character, and he also has a fabulous arse. It's a running joke in DC Comics and the community, but I think we could have done with seeing more of the healing as well as the initial trauma, so that when he does confront Two-Face later on, it feels earned when he refuses to kill him. They do skim quite a bit of his story, but it is okay, and I do think that Chris is pretty good. And I've got to admit, I do like how they translate the costume, which is basically just an altered batsuit with more colours, and it's not garishly bright colours, so it does blend into the shadows better, and I think that it looks good. I also appreciate that the Flying Graysons all have the classic Robin look, and that inspires his superhero costume. That is a really nice touch. They do also get him to say the classic Burt Ward phrase, "Holy rusted metal, Batman!" It's a fun callback, but it doesn't work within context, but I appreciate the attempt. There's also a new love interest on the scene, because Catwoman no longer exists for some reason. So in this one, we are introduced to Dr. Chase Meridian, played by Nicole Kidman. She's a psychologist who helps Bruce with his trauma and also offers her help against Two-Face and Riddler. And she's very hot. Yeah, she isn't the most developed character, and I don't quite understand a lot of the decisions that they take with her character. When she's with Bruce, I like her because we do get to see the psychologist, and her interactions with him I do like. But when she's with Batman, she almost becomes like a femme fatale character, and the music echoes that as well. And the expert help that she offers is not that helpful. This Riddler guy is obsessed with Bruce Wayne. Really? You don't say. Two-Face's coin is his Achilles heel. So helpful, Doctor. Also, am I right in thinking that she can't date her patients? On the other hand, when I rewatched this movie for this video, a thought crossed my mind, and I haven't been able to shake it off. This movie came out in 1995, and if Chase worked at Arkham Asylum, you do have the groundwork for a Harley Quinn. Everything that they need to adapt Harley Quinn into this movie is here. All they need to do is change her name. And if they wanted to, they could follow through on the original plan that they had in store for Harley Quinn. When Joel Schumacher was going to make a third Batman movie called Batman Unchained, Harley Quinn was set to be the main antagonist alongside Scarecrow. And in that movie, Harley Quinn was meant to be the daughter of the Joker. And if they did that, it would help give a reason for why it is that she's so obsessed with Batman in this movie, because maybe she knows what happened to her dad. I don't think that the big reveal would be in this movie, but maybe later on. But I don't write these movies. Let me know what you think down below. But as it is, I do like Nicole Kidman. I do think that she is very talented and does do the best that she can with this role. But as far as this movie goes, she is a very weak one and done love interest. Batman's trusty butler Alfred is back in this movie, and he is once again played by Michael Gough. Alfred is consistently one of the best parts of any Batman movie, and he is great once again, bringing a mixture of wise guidance, especially in his scenes with Robin, but you also get some of his witty and sarcastic remarks. Alfred has some of the best lines in this movie, and that's no small feat going up against Jim Carrey. "I'm afraid Master Dick has gone travelling. He ran away? Actually, sir, he took the car. He boosted the Jag, not the Jaguar. The other car. The Bentley? No, sir. The other car. I love that scene. I also think it's pretty funny how when Alfred gets knocked out by the Riddler when him and Two-Face invade Wayne Manor, he moves the tray he was carrying out of the way of the door so that they can open it. Anyway, he is brilliant once again, and I love his scenes. Right, baddies. Tommy Lee Jones plays Harvey Two-Face, and I don't know how to feel about his performance in this. He absolutely lacks the nuance and emotional depth that makes Two-Face such a good and complex character. And despite the movie basically saying that he has two personalities, we only see the one. And the one that we do see is just this really over-the-top, maniacal psychopath that loves causing chaos. Harv, your Joker is showing. It would have been so cool to have seen them do something along the lines of the animated series and actually have two distinct personalities. It would have been so cool to have seen the District Attorney and Big Bad Harv. And Tommy Lee Jones, I do think, could pull it off. So in that regards, he is disappointing, but even so, I can't deny just how much fun he is to watch. I mean, he is ridiculously over the top and seems to just pop up randomly throughout the movie, but he is so entertaining. What they've done for his look in this movie is a choice. I think the makeup and prosthetics that they use on his face are actually pretty good, and I do think that the purple colour scheme is actually quite unique. The purple hair is a bit mad. I also really like his costume in this and the way that it's split into two. But even with that said, I think that it could have done with less of the weird animal print. I really don't like that. But he is entertaining and he does have an infectious laugh. I do admittedly find it quite funny that Tommy Lee Jones didn't like working with Jim Carrey because apparently he couldn't sanction his buffoonery because what Tommy Lee Jones was doing in this movie was so serious. Anyway, yes, Jim Carrey is in this playing Edward Nygma, aka the Riddler. And again, casting wise, I do think that this is pretty spot on. He nails the eccentricities and the egotistical nature of the Riddler very well. And I do like that, especially early on. He is actually playing Riddler. He's not just doing Jim Carrey stuff. There is still some moments where there are a load of Carreyisms, and it is to be expected. Plus, I guarantee that Warner Brothers wanted more Jim Carrey action because they hired him to make sure that this was a hit. And don't forget, the year before this came out, Jim Carrey was in Ace Ventura, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber, and all of them were big hits. It's not out of character though, and I do think that his performance does actually suit this world quite well, even the really creative Riddle packages. And speaking of packages, his costume is pretty spot on, with the weird red hair and the question mark pattern suit. I don't mind seeing a bit of Jim Carrey, but I think we see just a little bit too much of him in this. It looks a bit too tight. I'm very mixed on his white look during the finale, but I love his light up jacket. I would like to see the Riddler be a little bit more serious and a little bit more sinister, just a bit. But this is a fun portrayal and he does make me laugh. It's not the funniest Jim Carrey has been in a movie, but he does have his moments. Like the bit where he's dressed up as Bruce and he even points out that he's got a mole as well. He's also the first villain in the entire series to get sent to Arkham. This is actually the first Batman movie that acknowledges that Metropolis exists. Apparently at this point in time they were trying to set up a Batman and Superman movie, but it never came to fruition. I think they even teased it in I Am Legend. Anyway, I really do like Jim Carrey in this role, and I do think that he is one of the most entertaining parts of this movie. Another part of this film that I really enjoy is the overall look and aesthetic. Now yes, this looks completely different to the Burton movies, with Gotham moving away from the dark and gothic architecture and into something brighter filled with neon lights. And for some reason giant statues that quite literally hold the city up. This still has some sprinkles of that gothic look from the Tim Burton movies, but even so, I can't deny that this does feel like a completely different city, but I will say that some of the visuals in this movie are genuinely gorgeous and eye-catching. The new Batcave honestly feels like a proper base of operations with some really fun areas. Plus, we also have a brand new Batmobile, and just like the city, the darker gothic look has been replaced with something featuring a skeleton kind of look with neon lights. I'm a bit split on this one, to be honest. I do like it overall, I do like a lot of the gadgets and accessories that it has, but I don't think it needs the lights. Also, we actually get to see the return of both the Batboat and Batplane, which is so cool. It's absolutely a ploy to sell more toys, but it is so cool seeing them again, and they are used in a fun way. The CG on them doesn't look great, but even so, yeah, this is back when CG was starting to get used a lot more in Hollywood movies, and they were trying to show off what it was that they were capable of. And yeah, it does look dated. It also allows for some bigger and more comic booky sequences, but it doesn't look the best, and neither does the green screen. But this movie still does do as much as it can for real, with real sets, props, stunt work and miniatures. And there's some really good stuff in here. And this also includes the music. The soundtrack for Batman and Robin was composed by Elliot Goldenthal, and I really like this soundtrack. The main score is genuinely brilliant and it makes so many scenes feel a bit more epic. Now, unfortunately, we do lose the main theme from Danny Elfman and Shirley Walker, but even so, its replacement I think is a very underrated Batman theme. I think it is a really suitably awesome theme for Batman, and I wish more people thought so too. It is a really good soundtrack, and I do think that it is worth checking out. And the same goes for the songs as well. I think they're really good too. There's two main big songs that get used in this movie, but both of them appear in the credits. The first one, and my favourite, is from U2, and that's Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me. I really do like that song, and I will admit, whenever I do watch this movie, I do tend to leave the credits playing so that I can listen to it. The other song is a song from Seal called Kiss from a Rose, and even though it wasn't created specifically for this movie, it did kind of go on to become the big anthem of the movie. It is a good song, maybe not as a Batman theme, but I do like it. And again, both are worth listening to. Right, I think I've gone on long enough in this video. Let's wrap things up. Overall, while not a great film, and it does have a lot of problems, it is fun and entertaining. The cast is great, the practicality and the soundtrack is great, the costumes and designs are pretty good and creative, the story is fine, the effects are so-so, and the performances are mixed. It's a camp and fun popcorn flick that is easy to watch and can be entertaining. There is a lot of wasted potential, but I can't deny that this has become a guilty pleasure movie, and I do have fun with it. I think DC Comics and Batman fans should at least have a look at this, and I would say to casual movie buffs to maybe check this out. It's definitely not a must-see movie, and it won't be for everyone, but I think if you just take it for what it is, I think you will find something to enjoy here. So with all that being said, my rating for Batman Forever is a 6 out of 10. Well, that is pretty much everything I want to say for this video, so if you have watched this video, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy this content, please be sure to like, subscribe and hit that notification button. If you have seen Batman Forever, let me know down in the comments what you think about it. Plus, if you have any suggestions for any future rewind reviews or recommendations you would like to see me do in the future, let me know down below. And yes, I will eventually get around to doing Batman and Robin. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you in the next video. See you guys.